Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside Events, an international podcast focused on the contemporary issues in events and festivals. This week, I'm joined by Dr. Vassilios Ziakas, and we're going to be talking a little bit about event portfolios, which is an area, obviously, that many of you will be familiar with Vassilios' work. And it's an area that you've been working on for a long time, Vassilios. So could you tell us a little bit about kind of who you are and why you're interested in this concept?
Yes, thank you, Mike, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to talk about event portfolios. So basically, I'm a scholar, author, and consultant in the management of leisure services. My line of work is interdisciplinary. It's cutting across events, sport, recreation, leisure, culture. Okay, so I cover all these areas. The broad aim of my research is to advance understanding of how events and leisure programs can be incorporated into sustainable development strategies. And for this reason, I'm interested in the concept of event portfolios because this is an important tool that we can achieve that. I've been doing research on event portfolios the last 20 years, since the beginning of my doctoral work, which was in the United States in Texas. So basically, I started, because I'm from a sport management background, that I started with trying to understand how we can optimize the benefits of sporting events for host communities. And then I discovered through my research that when we synergized sport and cultural events, including celebrations and generally a variety of events that occur in a community, then this is a way that we can achieve something that is fundamentally a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is going from the ad hoc planning of major one-off events, then going to another mindset of trying to create a permanent structure. Okay, and this is basically, as I will explain, the concept of the portfolio is a structure that occurs in the community and it is permanent. And then we see how we can synergize the individual events. Of course, some events will come and go, but the event portfolio will be there as a structure. Okay, so basically this was what I found from my doctoral work back. Well, that was back in 2007, almost. And then I started publishing in 2010 with the first empirical study on event portfolios, which was on the community of Fort Stockton in Texas. So basically, this is my background and my involvement with portfolios, which is, as I said, as empirical, and also I try to theorize it in my later work.
That's really useful. Thanks, Vassilios. And for those that are not familiar with the fundamental concept of event portfolio, like how would you could you sum it up maybe in like kind of 2 or 3 sentences, Vassilios? It was kind of captured in what you were saying, but like if there was a way to kind of just quickly kind of define the parameters of it, what would you say?
Very simply, an event portfolio is an annual program of a series of different events. It is designed strategically in order to distribute events throughout the year and to achieve multiple purposes. So we can achieve economic, social, community, environmental, and other objectives. Why? Because we have these different kinds of events assembled in an annual program. It is very important here that this program of events to be coordinated as a system. Okay, so that each event in the portfolio is just an element, is an element that can be used in conjunction with other events and with other community assets. in order to produce cumulative aggregate value that is more than the sum of individual parts. So it is the whole more important than individual events. And this again goes back to the change of mindset, okay, of trying to see the synergies between different type of events. So this is in event portfolios an holistic perspective. We are interested in individual events to the extent that they can be synergized with community assets and with other events. Of course, for achieving multiple purposes. That is the full potential, because we have the different events with different orientations. This is critically important for the events, because this way we can overcome the innate fragmentation of the event sector. We have learned to categorize events and then to have that kind of, this is the area of sport events, another area of festivals, another area of MICE events, and so on. From a portfolio perspective, yes, these categories are important, but then we see the synergies between them, not looking at them separately, disjointed. Then the other thing that is very important for the event portfolio concept is that it can enable us to achieve, maximize, and sustain event benefits. And the sustain here is about the longevity of event benefits. How we can make the benefits to longer stay in the community. Which is something that may sound contradictory when we have individual events. Why? Because individual events are temporary. So how we can have sustainable long-term benefits when the events, even if we take the larger of the events, the Olympics, is a temporary occasion lasting for years. Okay, then there will be some time that this will lose momentum. The event portfolio, as I said, as a permanent structure will be there, and the logic will be how we can bestow the benefits from one event to another.
That's really well.
That's the change of mindset. This responds to the disappointment of many people and many communities around the world, and especially people who have opposition against the staging of mega events and ad hoc one-off events. Why? Because they have very huge costs, and they don't deliver many times benefits back to the community, at least more benefits than the costs. Worst case scenario we can have in the case of white elephants, the white elephant syndrome. We can think here the worst example, the Athens Olympics, with the Olympic facilities that cannot be utilized later on. I would say here we have Olympic facilities, then what we need there, we need an event portfolio that will be using the facilities, okay, on a permanent basis. So with the event portfolio, we have that kind of a different way that we engage, and especially the cities that engage with events. Rather than focusing on hosting individual ad hoc one-off events, then the focus is how they can create a permanent structure of periodic event hosting. Okay, and this permanent structure is the event portfolio. So we are moving from the temporary and ad hoc planning of events to the ongoing, permanent, and better integrated way of having events into hosting strategies.
Thanks, Vassilios. That was.
I have to say here that the portfolio is a very simple logic, but its implementation is very complex. Because we have different stakeholders, we have different events, and so on. I tried here to to explain it very comprehensively, and I think it captures the most important aspects of portfolios.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And so therefore, kind of shifting away from the kind of the more kind of like the principles, the ideas, the theory of it, towards the more practice of it. From all of my experience working with destinations, the application of the idea of portfolio is something that I'm sure most local authorities, governments would love the idea to do. So it shifts the dial towards certain social policies or economic benefits or something like that. Or it might be community integration, it might be whatever. But there never seems to be, it's a very fragmented process still, isn't it, at the local level? In most local authorities, they don't have their hands on a portfolio that links to these strategic leveraging outcomes. Would you agree or disagree with that, Vassilios?
I disagree 100%. Even in strategic portfolios in cities like Edinburgh, which is the best example of having a deliberate event portfolio, we can see fragmentation because of the different stakeholders. And actually, what we could see in many cities is the multiple portfolios, which is another discussion. Is that yes, we can have multiple portfolios in one city, but then the issue is, okay, that we still need some kind of overarching coordination between the different events. It's very complex and it's very difficult. Why? Because we traditionally have this kind of over fragmentation. We have the different intersecting agencies that usually don't work together. We can think, for example, here sport agencies and then cultural, creative industries and so on. So this is something, that it just takes time. It takes time, but this is a huge opportunity for us, for the event scholars, to do research and to encourage how this can happen practically.
I agree. Yeah. My thoughts just exactly. It's entirely fragmented.
I
And
would also like
from go on, Vassilios.
Yes, I would also like to add at this point the case of mega events. The portfolio perspective is not against mega events, but it is about when a city wants to bid for an event, at the same time to see the events that already is hosting or is trying to host in the future, or if it can develop an event portfolio. So it is a question of how we can synergize the mega events with the portfolio.
Yeah, completely. Like mega events do something very, very different than a grassroots festival. And I think me and Laura Meisner talked about this on a previous podcast, which was that it's just the fact that you have all of these over excessive inflated benefits to try and win the thing in the first place, that they pretend, or there is some sort of charade going on, that it's going to deliver these more kind of localized benefits, but in fact
Yes.
they deliver benefits of an international scale, of national re-imaging projects, for example, and all that. So in some sense, I agree with you entirely. It's about how you synergize the small ones with the big ones and everything else in between. And Vassilios, in terms of where I've seen this approach kind of applied quite well is in Cambridge, my hometown. There is a huge gap in the year whereby we've got no tourists, we've got no English language students, we've barely got any events in the calendar, and the entire city goes a bit dead. And would you say that is a question that they haven't necessarily managed or thought enough about seasonality in their event portfolio? Would you agree with that?
Yes, of course. When we have in a calendar year the different events distributed, one of the things that we have to consider is the seasonality. And then we can see how we can schedule particular types of events off season. That's something very important that we can achieve through an event portfolio. The key thing here is again coordination and the overarching strategy for doing that. Okay, someone has to do it. It could be the destination management organization, it could be a city council, could be a convention, citizens bureau, I don't know, but there needs to be one organization that will be responsible for coordinating and overseeing the different events happening in the community. And then it is also important here to distinguish the two major types of portfolios we can currently see in the world. First of all, we have the organic portfolios, which are events, cities with events that don't have a deliberate strategy and don't necessarily use the word portfolio. But we can still see in these cities event calendars, annual programs of events, and there are synergies, fundamental synergies between these different events and some kind of coordination. So these are the organic portfolios that is the vast majority in the world. Especially in the United States, we can see many such organic portfolios. As I said, the first study that I did with my doctoral work was such a case. Then the formalized, I call them formalized portfolios, are the portfolios that are deliberate with one organization that has a strategy, and of course they use and the 10 portfolio, and they use specific mechanisms to organize the event portfolio. As I said, Edinburgh in Scotland is one of the first cities that has achieved that. Then we have other examples like Gold Coast in Australia, which may say here that it's an interesting case because also recently organized and the Commonwealth Games. So it's interesting to see here, okay, what happened in terms of the portfolio and the mega event. Then the Sunshine Coast again in Australia, Auckland in New Zealand, Gothenburg in Sweden are some of the cities that have deliberate portfolios. Also, at the regional level, interesting case is Wales here in UK, that it has a focus on organizing one-off events, but on a permanent basis by creating a portfolio. And this is another type of a portfolio, okay? Because of the diversity of events, we can have very different types and composition of portfolios, either on a city level or on a regional level. What we expect to see in the future is that more and more cities will be moving to formalized portfolios, from organic to formalized. And again, this is where event scholars have a critical role to play. How we can help in this transition from organic to formalized portfolios, and then of course how we can overcome the challenges and how we can optimize benefits.
And Vassilios, on that point, if you're a student or you're a university lecturer or professor or someone in industry looking at this video, kind of watching that video right now, what's the best way to provide that support for kind of your local community or your local government to try and get involved in helping them formalize, as you say, Vassilios? Is there anything kind of that you've seen works quite well?
Yes, well, first of all, we need to become advocates. We need to become advocates of event portfolios based on the benefits that they can provide, and then we can explain these benefits to organizations and to cities that can organize these events. What are these benefits? Let me explain. First of all, is the diversification of event of events and of the product that we have in a community. We can diversify our product offering. Then, as I said and before, we can sustain the benefits because we have this permanent event hosting. Then we can enhance collaboration between different stakeholders because by creating this structure of portfolio, we provide an opportunity for the different stakeholders to come together and work towards a common goal. Then we can expand the reach of our target markets. So it will not only be sport enthusiasts, we have sport events, but it will have and cultural celebrations or conventions and conferences. Then we have other markets, and then we can also have complementary markets through the different events. Then another thing in terms of resources is that we can create a pool of the resources that we can use and we can share across the portfolio in different events. This could be volunteers, this could be facilities, equipment, and money, and so on. So we can achieve the optimal use of resources. And then, as we mentioned it before, we can extend the tourism season by hosting in communities that they have tourism. Okay, we can choose to host events in off-peak periods. These are the major benefits that we can achieve. Now, our role as event scholars in implementing that and what specific knowledge we can offer. First of all, the critical thing here that we can offer is complementarities. We can offer knowledge of how different events complement one another. And this is what we need to make clear of how these complementarities can be cultivated and can be enhanced. These complementarities could be thematic in terms of the themes. Yes, we have different events, but still an event portfolio needs to have an overarching story. Okay, so how the theming could be under a common thread in the different events. This is the thematic way of having complementarities. Then it's about the resources, about the volunteers pools, sharing of resources, as I said. Another critical thing is the knowledge exchange between different events, how this will happen and can be accelerated, and then also the supplementary markets that we can create through events and through attracting and satisfying the needs. So that's the aspect very briefly about complementarities. Another critical thing that we can explain to the stakeholders is that in terms of marketing, we are not interested anymore so much in the marketing mix of individual events. But what we are interested in is the design of the portfolio, of the marketing mix of the portfolio, which will include the different events and the community assets. Okay, and that part of the holistic marketing mix changes again the way that we do things in communities when it comes with events. Then the other area is the area of evaluation. We don't currently have evaluation models, complex evaluation models that can capture this process, and especially that can capture how one event, no matter its size, maybe it is very small, but still it can contribute to the whole portfolio, to the whole system. So we need to capture the effects of individual events to the system and then the aggregate value of the system.
I always Go on, Vassilios.
Yes, so that aspect of evaluation is very important in terms of knowledge that we can, because in host cities need to see numbers, need to see variables, okay, that evaluate how things are happening in order to devise strategies. And then the other area that is critically important for communities is the relationship management. Since we have different stakeholders in events, event portfolio is basically a relationship management exercise. It is very easy to say, yes, we will bring different stakeholders to work towards a common goal, but many times there can be frictions, there can be conflicts, and so on. So how we create, it is also important in how we maintain the relationships and how we enhance the relationship between these different stakeholders. So these are the things that, as advocates of event portfolios and as advocates of a policy change in event hosting strategies, okay, we need to talk about. And then let me also finish with that, making clear the thing about synergies. Okay, because many times, I use the word synergies. So very simply here, what we mean with synergies. Basically, we mean that we need to create synergies on the thematic level, on the policy level, on the inter-organizational level, and on the operational level. An event portfolio, in order to work effectively and efficiently, needs to have synergies at all these levels. Thematically, in terms of policy, we need a comprehensive policy. Inter-organizational networks, very important. We need to create such a network that can help stakeholders to work together. And operationally, we need the resources, the coordination of the different events when they would be scheduled, the programming of the portfolio, the design of the portfolio, and so on.
Vassilios, that is a very comprehensive response to that question. It's really going to be really, really useful for kind of students to hear that. We could talk probably about this concept for hours and hours and hours, and I think that was a really, really useful overview and actually quite a deep delve into the concepts. And hopefully in the future, we'll get you back on to talk about something kind of really quite specific, maybe a kind of a specific aspect of maybe how it's implemented on the ground and maybe kind of best practices and that sort of thing, to maybe draw on some of the consultancy stuff that you've been doing with people on the ground. But I've run out of time, so I'm going to have to leave it there, Vassilios. But thank you so much for coming on Inside Events. I'm sure a lot of people will find this very, very, very useful, not only in academia, but also beyond as well. So thanks for coming on. We'll have you again
Excellent, Mike.
in the
Thank
future.
you for inviting me, and we will talk again in the future. Event portfolio is ongoing. There are developments, so definitely we will have a chance to talk in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.